Hey guys, it's Dr. Justin Marcagiani here. Hope everyone is having a fabulous day. Today's video is going to be on testing for gluten sensitivity. Gluten sensitivity is a big issue. We'll chat about it here briefly and just some ways to kind of assess that. And also put your comments down below. Let me know your experience with gluten sensitivity. Really curious. Before you do, make sure you smash that like button. Really helps. Also, make sure you hit that bell so you get good notifications of content coming your way. All right, awesome. So what is gluten sensitivity? So gluten, which is the major, gluten is like it's an umbrella of prolamins. And people, when they talk about gluten, they primarily mean gliadin. But typically you have three major gluten-containing grains: wheat, barley, and rye. So you have gliadins, the major protein in wheat, and there's two others in barley and rye. So really gliadin is the major protein. People say gluten, they're kind of referring to that one as well as the barley and rye. Now there's other types of prolamins that are in corn, which is zein, or rice, which is horzonin, or oat, which is avenin. So these are different proteins. So think of it, you have prolamins are this kind of big umbrella, and under prolamins you have different types of glutens. And these different types of glutens, we have gliadin, which is the major gluten in wheat, and then you have barley and rye, and then you have the horzonin, the avenin, and the zein in the oat and the corn and the rice. So these are other types of glutens. Now, the major one people are the most sensitive to is going to be the wheat, barley, and rye. That all came about by the work of Dr. Dickey, who was a pediatrician over in Holland. During World War II time, there was rationing. They had to pull back on a lot of the grains. A lot of the kids in the gastrointestinal ward actually improved. And then when the rations came off after the war, they started adding these foods back in. Kids got sick again. He started making the correlation with the foods that were being rationed and being pulled out. Kids started to get better. So that's kind of where celiac and a lot of the gluten sensitivity stuff started. Now, celiac is more the pathological extreme of gluten sensitivity. So celiac's going to have a lot of destruction of the microvilli, the finger-like vacuum cleaners in the small intestine. And you're going to see about an 80% degradation or atrophy or reduction in those from the inflammation. You may also see like endomysial antibodies or transglutaminase antibodies. So you need like more severe antibody or destruction for the celiac diagnosis to kind of, for you to fall under that umbrella. Now, you could still be sensitive to gluten. You could still be having food reactions to gluten. That's the problem. And so when we look at gluten issues, everyone who is celiac is gluten sensitive. But not everyone who is celiac, or not everyone who's gluten sensitive, has celiac. That's kind of the overarching umbrella. And because conventional medicine tends to look at things from a pathological lens, when you talk to your doctor about having a problem with gluten, they're going to be like, oh, well, you don't have celiac, you're fine. Or they'll do a celiac test, which is usually transglutaminase test or an endomysial antibody test. Maybe they'll run a gliadin protein antibody test. Maybe they'll recommend a scope to see if there's atrophy in the microvilli, right? It's possible. But then the odds are you may not come back with positive rates on those, especially if you've already had experiences where you're like, well, I felt bad with those foods and I cut them out, I feel better. And so then if you're not eating those foods, your immune system may not have any provoked immune response where you may not even test positive. So they may want you to challenge that and eat a whole bunch of crappy gluten for a while before that test is even of value. So this is why we have to draw a line between gluten sensitivity and celiac, because most people tend to miss that. Now, there's some genetic tests that can give you a pretty good window if you are genetically susceptible. And that would be the HLA-DQ2 and 8 on the gluten side. And then there's 1 and 3 and the alpha-1, beta-1 subtypes for the 1 as well. And that can give you a pretty good idea if you're gluten and or celiac susceptible. Now, even if you have the DNA, you still have to have the trigger, meaning you have to be exposed to that food over time. Obviously, the more genetically susceptible you are, the faster and easier it comes. The less susceptible, it may require a more of a gluten exposure along with other types of stressors. So kind of keep that in the back of your head. It's not a guarantee given just because you get exposed to gluten that you're going to have that issue. So we talked about the lab testing, different antibodies, talked about more of the genetic kind of salivary or buccal swab on the genetic side. That's going to be the HLA-DQ2 and 8 and then 1 and 3 and alpha beta subtypes. Those are going to be your best for testing perspective. Now, I tell patients, if you feel better cutting a food out, well, guess what? That's enough data for me. And so I only recommend maybe doing the genetic testing if you have patients that really want to know where they're at, they're really curious, or they just want to know, like, hey, am I at a genome that is susceptible enough where they could maybe add it back in? There's only one genome, I think it's the HLA-DQ4, that could potentially add it back in. But remember, glutens can still create other problems. Like, they looked at non-celiac gluten sensitivity, and they saw, these are people that are like totally non-celiac at all, 100%, but they still saw increased gut permeability, even though they were guaranteed lab-wise had no celiac. So what that says is gluten by itself could potentially still have the effects of increased gut permeability. And if you're eating other foods along with that gluten, it's an increased chance of food allergens and just kind of stressing your immune system. There's also the fact that grains do have anti-nutrients, lectins, salicylates, phenols. They're also going to have oxalates and phytates. These are things that are going to block minerals, block mineral absorption, block protein digestion. So they're not the best foods from a digestive, nutrient-dense, anti-inflammatory, low-toxin perspective. So it's really important to kind of keep that in mind. We want to make sure all food meets that criteria. So I tell my patients, if you feel good cutting this food out, that's great. I mean, my job is to help you become Superman, Superwoman. And if you're getting exposed to kryptonite every day and you're feeling weak, well, that's not good. We want to decrease our exposure to kryptonite so we can perform optimally. So elimination, provocation is always going to be the best, and gluten is usually going to be one of the last foods. And some patients, they really do better on an autoimmune elimination, cutting out not just grains, legumes, and dairy, but nuts, seeds, nightshades, eggs, and even butter and ghee initially can really make a big difference. And also, if you have a problem with digestion, you may need extra support to help with the digestive side. Again, when I see patients, I'm working to the 6 R's, removing the bad foods. Number 1, replacing enzymes and acids and bile salts. Number 2, repairing the gut lining and the hormonal system, like the adrenals and stress and anti-inflammatory systems. Number 4, then that's where we remove the infections, is number 4. Number 5, we work on repopulating, reinoculation of pre and probiotics. And then we also, number 6 is where we retest. We want to make sure there's no other new infections coming in to the system. So I hope that makes sense. If you guys enjoyed this content, feel free to click down below. You can schedule with myself or my staff. I'm available worldwide. And again, if you enjoy the content, subscribe, thumbs up, and make sure you hit that bell so you get notifications of great content coming your way. All right, let's open up for questions. What's cooking? Have you heard of TRS, heavy metal detox? No, I have not. Heavy metal detox, if you're going to do it, well, one, look at your history. If you have mercury fillings, right, silver fillings, odds are that could be a problem. But I always address heavy metals after the gut's clear, because a lot of how metals are removed are via the hepatobiliary system. So if you have poor gallbladder and liver and digestive function, you dump a lot of these toxins from the liver, gallbladder into the digestive system. So if we have poor digestion and we have poor motility, there's a good chance that we're going to reabsorb a lot of those toxins. And I always test heavy metals via a urinary DMPS challenge test. Other people may look at it different ways. They may do like a hair analysis, or they may do a blood test. Those ways aren't going to be the best to really look at tissue burden. A lot of times you need a provocation agent of DMPS or DMSA to really help pull those metals out from the tissues that could be stored off to the side. Is whole basmati rice better for digestion than brown rice? I mean, I don't love rice to begin with. I mean, of course, brown rice does have more B vitamins in it, so that's good. But rice itself tends to have a lot more anti-nutrients, so white rice tends to be better, not because of a nutritional standpoint. It's still relatively low in nutrients. And of course, white rice is the lowest, but what it is, though, it has less anti-nutrients in it. So it's more just good glucose and no nutrition really, but good glucose, good carb-based calories. So for energy or a lot of endurance-based stuff or a lot of exercise, it may be okay, but it's going to be the least on the inflammatory scale, okay? I'm not looking to get my nutrition from rice. I'm going to have a lot of extra non-starchy vegetables in there and other really good fat and protein-based foods. If you're trying to fix gut issues, what carbs other than vegetables would you recommend? Friend is male, lose too much weight with low carb, high fat. So you could do greener bananas, which are lower in FODMAPs. You can do plantains. You can do parsnips. You can do rutabagas. You can do turnips. Sweet potatoes are a moderate FODMAP, so you could always do that. Maybe white potato, as long as you've been able to add it back in. Peel, cook, mash. That's a lower FODMAP food. turnips, rutabaga, parsnips. Those are all pretty good ones to add in. Does estrogen-rich foods and estrogen increase in males cause thyroid problems? Yeah, it definitely can. It can increase thyroid binding globulin. So eating lots of meats that have artificial hormones in there, not good. Eating lots of soy and phytoestrogen-rich food, not good either. For a female, can more of a keto diet increase fungal or candida issues? Notice psoriasis got better, but new light fungal spots are appearing. It depends. I mean, are we talking fungus stuff on your skin, or are we talking about like more candida gut stuff? So lower carbs always going to decrease fungus. Now, you may, if you're noticing it on your skin, you may have to topically hit it with a really good shampoo, a really good antifungal, kind of a tea tree, natural kind of thing too. You can always do, like these are really good like fungal pens, really good for like fungus on the toenails, which are helpful. You can get like tea tree oil blends, what you can rub on your skin if you have a topical fungal issue, or worst case, you can always get a prescription if you need, like a ketoconazole or fluconazole. Just make sure you're supporting your gut. So if you're addressing an external fungal issue, you're doing it internally as well as externally. Dr. J, is a swollen right upper rib cage a liver issue? So yeah, so upper right's usually going to be gallbladder or liver. So it's like liver's like this. It's like this. It's like, and underneath it's the gallbladder. Okay, and so it could easily be a gallbladder issue, especially if it's sludgy and you typically don't eat good fats and you eat a big fatty meal and you got a stone in there. It definitely could be the case for sure. How to increase fat absorption and reduce oily stools after stopping right shoulder, grill, bladder pain. Okay, so if you have gallbladder pain issues, yeah, you want to make sure you're taking HCl enzymes and bile support. So in my line, we use Liver Supreme, which is great. It's got ox bile in there. It's got dandelion root. It's got phosphatidylcholine, taurine. These are things that help thin out the bile really good. Make sure you take enzymes and acids with it. And then look for common offending foods. So like I have an article on gallbladder food allergens. Take a look at it. Go Google it on justinhealth.com as a search there. One of the more common ones on the paleo side are going to be pork, coffee, and cabbage is a big one. So those are kind of good paleo foods, but those could be an issue. In that article, there's a couple more, and they're in order of operations of like most likely to least. So look at the top 3 to 5 and see which ones you eat the most and avoid them. Okay, very good. I like the idea of a fungal pen that you just showed. Where might I be able to get one of those? I'll put one on the website here under my recommended products, and then you can do that topically on the nails too. Those are pretty good. I'll find a link for that for you. If your fat digestion is on and off and having a cheat meal once every 15 days like gluten can make digestion worse. Yeah, I mean, I always tell patients, if it takes you a while to rebound from like cheat meals, that defeats the whole purpose of it, right? Like if you go read Tim Ferriss's book, I think it's the 4-Hour Body, he talks about like a cheat day and you just like go all out, have anything you want. But then most people, they take 3 or 4 days to recover. So then you really only have like 3 really good days of feeling better, and then you repeat it all over again. So whatever you cheat on, it shouldn't linger too much into the next day. If it's lingering, you gotta rebalance your cheats, i.e. siete chips over corn chips, i.e. grain-free substitutes over a gluten-free rice or potato or corn, right? Choose something yuca or siete based, like use the keto, use the Birch Benders pancakes or waffles over, your typical crappy gluten-free waffle that's still loaded with grains. Try to choose lower sugar alcohol. Use natural binders and activated charcoal and enzymes to help mitigate a lot of those side effects. Great questions. All right, very good, very good. Any other questions so far? I think we hit them all here, guys. What do you think? Anything else? Very good, very good. Excellent. Let me see. Is there any other questions I hit here? All right, really good job, guys. So in general, I would just highlight here with gluten sensitivity, always try to be grain-free. Don't let a lot of the cross-contaminated or cross-reactive gluten foods. So cross-reactive is like rice reacting or corn reacting or oat reacting. Cross-contaminated is, hey, the wheat truck that brought wheat last week is now carrying the oats to the supermarket this week. That's more of a little bit different of a thing. Or the person that flipped your burger, right? Just flip someone else's fries or just pull their fries out with that same thing and then they're using it on your burger, right? So cross-contaminated versus cross-reactive, just make sure you understand that. Is stress a major trigger for thyroid or liver problems and digestion? Yeah, I mean, anytime you overactivate the adrenals and you have more cortisol and adrenaline output, that activates, that's part of the sympathetic nervous system response. That's going to slow down your metabolism. It's going to increase cortisol, which decreases thyroid conversion. It's also going to decrease stomach acid and enzymes, because when your body's stressed, it doesn't want to have to be worrying about digesting and breaking down foods. Good questions, though. How do you remove an epipope and I don't even know what that is. Never heard of that. From your stomach. Not sure what you're saying there. I'd have to Google that word to make sure it's actually a real thing. But no idea on that one right now. Is a boiler chicken and eggs equally bad and estrogen rich and cause hormonal issues? Not sure what you're saying there. So in general, you want to make sure, is boiler a type of chicken, type of egg? But in general, you want to make sure chickens and are going to be pasture fed. And of course, the eggs as a byproduct will be of high quality too. So I like Vital Farms is really good. Fresco Farms is also really good too. Try to go with those. That's going to be a really good kind of first step to make sure your nutrition's great. All right, excellent. Anything else, y'all? All right, guys, phenomenal chatting with y'all. You guys have an excellent day. Comments down below. Thumbs up. Really appreciate it. Share it with family and friends that could benefit. Have a good one, y'all. Bye.